Welcome back to another video on PC flipping. This is episode 7 and today we're going to be going to Manly to pick up a nice office computer and sort of renovate it, give it some new life and turn it into an excellent gaming PC that I'm going to flip on Facebook Marketplace. So yeah, let's get into it. So I just caught the bus there and back and I would say it only took about 2 hours in total, so that was pretty good. Okay, so first impressions is that it's pretty good. It's got a little bit of dust on the top, but that's nothing that a microfiber cloth can't fix. Okay, so the case. We've got a Draco 10 case by Antec. Seems to be pretty good. Nice airflow on the front with a tempered glass side panel. Seems to be pretty bog standard, so I'll just take this off. Okay, so I paid 240 Australian dollars for this build and it's actually really quite a good value. That's around 160 US dollars for my American fans out there. On the CPU side, we've got an i3-10100 as well as an H510 motherboard from ASRock. It's the H510M AC, so it actually has Wi-Fi, which is actually quite a nice touch. Those sticks are pretty fragile, I've found. Yeah, definitely not a bad motherboard and CPU combo. But where I'm let down a little bit is with the single 8GB stick of RAM. Now the listing said that it had 16 gigs of RAM, 2 sticks, but the photo only shared 1. So it kind of makes sense, but maybe I got scammed a little bit, but it's alright overall. And then for the GPU, we're meant to have a GT 1030, but this is a GT 730. So I think I got scammed a little bit. Yeah, I was gonna replace it anyway. So it wouldn't make that much of a difference, but I was going to flip the GT 1030. They sell a little bit higher than the GT 730, but overall they're both graphics cards and are both pretty much e-waste at this point. And then for the power supply, you've got some pretty nice bog standard cables. The cable management's a little bit atrocious, but we've got the Thermaltake Light Power 450 watt, good old reliable 80 plus white. It'll do the job. And then around the back, we've got a Kingston 240 gig SSD. It's SATA, you know, bog standard SATA drive. But as for my first impressions, I think the system's actually looking really quite good. So yeah, let's test some games out and see how it runs as of right now before any upgrades. In Fortnite at 1080p lower settings in performance mode, we were getting around 80 to 70 FPS on average, which isn't actually a bad playing experience, and it was conceivably playable. But when we got into action in tilted towers or other busy areas, what I'd find is the FPS would drop to around 40, which sort of made it pretty unplayable if you wanted a competitive experience. But yeah, Fortnite was sort of playable, I would say. Now jumping into Siege, you can see that at 1080p lower settings, we're getting only 30 FPS. So in this context, it is completely unplayable just because it is a fast-paced action game. We were also getting around 35 milliseconds of latency. So yeah, you're definitely at a disadvantage in that game and I would not recommend it. So now that we've gotten our baseline benchmarks, let's do some upgrades and see how it performs after then. Now the first upgrade that I want to do to this system isn't actually a proper upgrade, but instead using one of the system's features that wasn't actually being used before, and that is the RGB on the front panel. So around the back we've just got a SATA connector that if I plug in, we've now got RGB lighting on the front. We can change the lighting effect to pretty much anything that we want, and then I think if we hold it, it turns off. Yeah, it's actually looking quite nice at the moment. Yeah, definitely a good feature of this case, and I also don't have to hook it up to my motherboard, which is an added bonus. So the next upgrade I want to make is actually to the RAM. Now, in Black Friday, I picked up this 2 8GB stick of 3600 MHz RAM from Corsair on M-Wave, but unfortunately, because it's an i3-10100, you can't run it at any speeds above like 3000, and even that's pushing the limits. So I'm going to swap it with my PC RAM that is 3200 MHz. So I'm going to get an upgrade in my PC. And as this PC is used, yeah, using used RAM is still perfectly fine. Now for the next upgrade, I want to upgrade the GPU. Now I'm going to be using my GTX 1650 that I have lying around, but you can pick these up for around $100. And for an i3-10100, it really is quite a really nice pick. It won't bottleneck it too much, and the i3-10100 can keep up. But before I install that, let's put some nice cable extensions in from Formula Mod. Now I believe that I picked these up for 22 bucks on AliExpress, which is actually really quite a good deal. AliExpress has some great finds, and yeah, so let's put the cables in, put the GPU in, and then run some benchmarks. Now after about half an hour of cable managing and putting in upgrades, yeah, I reckon the system looks really quite nice. We've got the nice GPU, full size, which sort of hides the missing PCI bracket. We've got some nice cable extensions, 16 gigs of RAM, and the only really sticky outy part would be the Intel stock cooler, but I'm going to see if I can fix that later on. But for now, let's retest the benchmarks. So yeah, in Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings, running at performance mode on 1080p low, with everything set to low except for view distance, you can see that we're getting a nice average FPS of around 146. Yeah, it's definitely a good experience, definitely quite competitive, and you can see our 1650 can keep up with the i3-10100, as that is our bottleneck as of right now. But yeah, definitely a really good playing experience. Let's hop into Siege, shall we? Okay, so in Siege at 1080p low settings, you can see that we're getting a really nice FPS average of around 200 FPS, which is really quite good. But yeah, this is a really good experience, especially considering this system only cost me about $340. I didn't know where the thorn trap was. Well yeah, Siege runs really well, and I'm really happy with the performance. Okay, so in Shadow of the Tomb Raider running at 1080p high preset, you can see that we're getting a nice around 60 FPS, which is really quite good. Now for this game, you can definitely play at 30 FPS, but having that 60 FPS experience at high settings is really quite nice, especially considering that this is on a 1650, which at this point is quite an old graphics card. You can get a really nice experience out of it. So yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a AAA title from a few years ago, runs really quite well. So overall, I'm really happy with how this build turned out. You know, I paid 240 Australian dollars, which is about 180 US dollars, for an i3-10100 and a GT 730 with a nice build to support it. And I think the upgrades actually really helped us bring some new life into this office build. So what I'm hoping to do next is list the GPU for $15 and make $15 profit, as well as listing the PC for $600, and if that goes to plan, then we'll have a profit of 186 Australian dollars all up. That is a whopping 45% return. So hopefully I can get someone to buy it for 600, if not I'd settle for 550, and yeah, we'll just go from there. If you want to look at the total cost of every part altogether, here's a little chart on the left. Pause now if you want to read that. But yeah, definitely a really nice build in my opinion. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe as it really helps out the channel. And as always, I'm TechBiz and I'm out.